15 minutes before being tossed to the bottom of the Pacific as shark bait, you still thought you were a queen. You. A supreme cash cow. The very one who drove hundreds of educated men out there to drain their bank accounts, mortgage their homes, and swallow a bullet from sheer humiliation. Yet here you are, paralyzed in the hull of a speedboat reeking of rust. You are dying. And no, this isn't some romantic deathbed scene with tear-jerking last words. You are about to be disposed of like infectious bio-waste. That's the pre-programmed endgame for nature's defective clones. And to understand why you're laying here, we have to rewind 18 years. Back to the day you slipped out of your mother in a bloody, slimy mess, screaming into a world that was already way too crowded, and way too cruel. You grew up in a house where your existence was treated like a forgotten piece of furniture. Your dad was a brooding ghost. His gentleness was actually just absolute cowardice against life. He dodged every ounce of fatherly responsibility, shrinking into cheap glasses of bottom-shelf bourbon, letting the outside world crumble. Your mom. Total opposite. She thrived on toxic drama. Anytime things didn't go her way, she'd start belting out tragic soap opera theatrics, a bastardized art form used solely to make her the center of a pity party. Nobody in that house taught you how to survive, how to love, or hell, even how to be a normal human being. You raised yourself like a weed, soaking up toxic nutrients from their neglect just to grow. Then, middle school hit, and that feral instinct found its stage. You got into it with some brat in your grade. There were no apologies. No running to the teacher. You two dragged each other behind the gym to settle it with jungle law. Backed by 15 years of pent-up rage and your mother's inherited bitterness, you pounced on her like a starving animal. You won. As you stood there, panting, watching her clutch her face and cry, a strange sound echoed. It was the cheering, the gasps, the absolute brown-nosing of the crowd around you. In that exact second, your brain dumped a massive, addictive dose of dopamine. You realized a naked truth. Playing nice just makes you a doormat for the world. But if you're cruel, if you're stronger, you get to step on people, and force them to look up to you. That craving for the spotlight, the hunger to hear the mob scream your name, started sprouting right there in the mud. By the end of high school, Derek showed up. Derek wasn't loud like the other guys trying to flex. He seemed quiet, a bit rough around the edges, but he possessed a lethal weapon. He listened. He knew exactly when you needed a nod, and when you needed a shoulder. For a girl starving for attention and suffering from severe childhood emotional deprivation, Derek was a life raft in a freezing ocean. That sly friendship shifted into romance after just one quick, booze-fueled night. You thought you had found your safe harbor. In reality, you had just stepped one foot into the slaughterhouse. At 9:53 p.m. that night, Derek took you to a dive bar patio. You were drunk on the illusion of maturity, of freedom. By the fourth drink, your head was spinning, and a cloud of white smoke, heavy with the sickeningly sweet smell of artificial fruit, blew right into your face. Derek handed you a vape pen. You weren't stupid enough to not know what was inside that shiny plastic tube. Synthetic weed, THC oil, designer chemicals, call it what you want, you knew it was a death trap. But right then, logic surrendered to the urge to let go. You took a hit. A deep one. The chemicals flooded your lungs, shredding every neurological barrier. Everything blurred. You drifted into a manic, uncontrollable high. Where Derek took you, what he did, you knew it all, but you chose to play blind. You lied to yourself, saying you were just enjoying your youth. But really, you had just signed your own death warrant on a cheap motel bed. 2 months later, right after you turned 18, the game was over. During a date, Derek said he was out of cash for the juice. The physical withdrawal, the irritable scratching at your nervous system, forced you to face a brutal reality. You weren't vaping for fun anymore. You were vaping just to feel normal. You had become an addict, a puppet with cut strings, ready to do absolutely anything for a hit of vapor. 2 days later, the fateful phone call rang. Derek painted a picture of a life-changing gig down across the border. Easy work, high pay, wild parties, and you could leave whenever you wanted. If you were sober, maybe you would have been suspicious. But with a brain screaming for a fix, and a life with absolutely zero to lose, you nodded. You grabbed your backpack and hopped on a luxury coach bus in the dead of night, thinking you were riding to paradise. The second you stepped on board, the smell of chloroform hit. The world unplugged. You blacked out. You had no idea that the title of girlfriend had just been stripped away, replaced by a price tag barcode. You officially became frozen freight, en route to hell. You were sold. Your market value? Probably about the same as a stolen Vespa. You woke up with a skull-splitting migraine. The stench of mold, stale piss, and rust punched you right in the nose. At 7 a.m. the next morning, a guy dressed in all black dragged you downstairs. The scene before you snuffed out your last dying ember of hope. A closed-off compound, rows of soulless box-like buildings, and a towering perimeter wall wrapped in miles of bloody barbed wire. A female translator spoke in a flat, deadpan drone, announcing a ransom so astronomically high it would keep you locked in this cage for at least a year. Ah, the fine art of modern slave management, give the victim a fake glimmer of hope so they willingly plow the fields. You were handed a few skimpy outfits, a smartphone preloaded with dozens of emulator apps, and locked inside a tiny, pale pink room. Your job wasn't heavy lifting. You weren't waiting tables. You were being trained to sell yourself in a digital format. The routine began. You strapped yourself into the skimpiest lingerie imaginable, slapping on a dozen image filters to shrink your jaw and stretch your legs. When that red live dot lit up, thousands of eyes swarmed your screen. On the other side, thousands of grown, educated, high-status men were voluntarily slamming their keyboards and wiring you cash. They weren't idiots. They knew damn well they were buying a mirage. But they bought it anyway, because in this hyper-isolated, cynical society, loneliness is a terminal cancer. And you, ironically, were the absolute cheapest painkiller on the market. Once your viewer count hit the quota, a few clicks funneled the audience into private chat groups. That's where the psychological warfare really kicked off. When a client paid the $8 VIP entry fee for a private room, their brain automatically locked into a sunk cost fallacy. They invested, now they needed a return. At this stage, you were nothing but a live feed prop. All the texting, the sweet nothings, the emotional manipulation. That was handled by other guys in the company, using scripts written by literal criminal psychologists. Once the prey was completely bogged down in the emotional swamp, the financial investment opportunity was dropped. Fake crypto charts. Fake profits. But very real money. Clients drained their life savings and mortgaged their houses just to feed the system. Eventually, the trap door would snap shut, and the account of their sweet little internet girlfriend would vanish into thin air. Leaving behind a broken man with millions in debt, who just ruined his own life over a pixelated ghost. And you? You didn't feel a shred of guilt. You were ecstatic. Innocence died, making way for pure greed. You reveled in the godlike power of dealing illusions. 3 months of grinding, and you became the top earner. The commission checks hitting your account blinded you completely. Buying your freedom wasn't even a thought anymore. You threw yourself into the animalistic lifestyle of the compound. All night, degenerate orgies fueled by meth, hard liquor, and pack mentality flesh games. You even picked up side gigs, sleeping with upper management for cold, hard cash. Any remaining moral boundaries had been pulverized long ago. You lived fast, furious, sliding down a grease-slicked slope of pure lust. You thought you were riding the tiger. You thought you were winning. But you forgot one basic rule. Things bought with the flesh and blood of others will eventually be paid for with your own life. One muggy night, stinking of booze and smoke, you were servicing a client in a VIP room when the world spun. Your chest seized. You collapsed, cracking your skull against the freezing tile floor, and faded to black. When consciousness dragged itself back, you found yourself laying in the hull of a high-speed boat. Next to you, the compound's shady resident doctor was tossing a stack of medical files into the trash. You didn't even have to ask, his dead eyes told you everything. You tested positive. Terminal stage STD. And your liver was actively rotting away after months of chemical abuse. In this ruthless, underground capitalist machine, a human being is only valuable if they turn a profit. A broken money printer that carries an infectious disease. There's only one outcome. Disposal. The speedboat cut its engines over a stretch of deep, pitch-black water. Two massive guys in life jackets stepped up. No yelling. No chance to beg. They hoisted your frail, decaying body into the air. Suddenly, right on the edge of death, a lightning bolt of memory struck you. You remembered your dad's brooding silhouette. You remembered your mom's screeching voice. You didn't remember them out of some profound, holy love. You remembered them because, in this absolutely brutal world, besides those two miserable excuses for parents, you had absolutely nothing else to call your own. A whole lifetime spent stepping on others just to be seen, and in the end, you leave this world in absolute invisibility. The two muscular arms shoved hard. You free fell toward the water. A muddy splash echoed, instantly swallowed by the ocean waves. Water flooded your lungs, dragging you deep down to the bottom of the sea, erasing every trace you ever existed. The boat spun around, heading back to shore. And somewhere else, in some other city, at another dive bar, another teenage girl takes a deep drag from a vape pen, daydreaming about a future of freedom. The loop resets. Beneath the glare of bright smartphone screens, the traps are wide open, waiting for the next ones to just walk right in.